役立たずは楽。授業の妨害要因はこの世の果てまで追撃してやる。全部倒せばいいんですね。役立たずは楽。授業の妨害要因。近寄らないで。じゃないとみんな殺しちゃうかもしれない。全てを終わらせましょう。役立たずは楽。授業の妨害要因はこの世の果てまで追撃してやる。もっと早くもっと強く。奴のことが卵なくなっちゃった。役立たずは楽。授業の妨害要因。近寄らないで。じゃないとみんな殺しちゃうかもしれない。役立たずは楽。授業の妨害要因。この世の果てまで追撃してやる。もっと早くもっと強く。奴のことなく撃つのです。弾がなくなっちゃった。役立たずは楽。授業の妨害要因。近寄らないで。じゃないとみんな殺しちゃうかもしれない。役立たずは楽。授業の妨害要因。この世の果てまで追撃してやる。全部倒せばいいんです。
Hi, okay, so I think this is the first time I'm talking in a Nikke video. So I'll be explaining this theme and discussing a bit of Dorothy at the end. Okay, so the purpose of this theme is spamming Dorothy's burst. And so I needed Dala here for the burst cooldown reduction, since Dorothy's burst cooldown reduction triggered by the last bullet hitting, even with Privity's ammo reduction buff debuff, it doesn't work. It's not enough for this team, especially since Isabel and Vesti has that -5 seconds on the full burst time. Okay, so Dala's skills, gear, pretty bad, irrelevant on a support like Dala. And these are her skills. So there's entrepreneurship, which triggers every 5 seconds. 10 seconds. But there's a 5-second downtime, so yeah. And then there's this. This is the one I really needed from Dala. Also, she's a burst too, so yeah. And then there's here additional buffs, and this is her burst. Cube is onslaught level 2. Then for Privity, this is here. These EX magazine at level 7, so this is the buffs. And then assault cube for this. Yeah, you never know, right? And then here burst. Okay, so for Isabel, these are gear. Okay, so Isabel is really good in this team because I'm spamming bursts, right? And then her kit is focused solely on that, spamming burst, and that buffs her for a long time. Okay, so that's good on her. And then there's this. It's really strong. This one in particular is really good on her kit. And this is the reason why I'm really using her, so I can spam Dorothy's burst, because full burst time ends quicker, so I can build up that burst gauge earlier. And then there's that resilience cube. I'm using resilience cube. And then Vesti for this one as well. Okay, so Vesti has really good buffs as well. And then this damage is really good. And then Wingman cube. Okay, so we're going on Dorothy now. Yeah, level 5 skills and burst. Okay, so first, Holy Fire. This buff is really strong since it's multiplicative. I think, yeah, I've heard that right. It's multiplicative, so it's not added with attack buffs. So attack buffs are first multiplied to do your base attack. So it's amplified by the attack buffs, and then that the result of that is multiplied by this. Okay, then there's Baptism. This one is really strong, but it's distributed damage. But if you're, for example, if you're just gonna attack one enemy, it's like dealing Scarlet's Burst, right? The multiplier, I mean. So for example, this one, I multiply it by 5, it's 855%, right? I say multiply it by 5 because once you use her burst, this one changes to a 2-second cooldown skill for 10 seconds. So that's 5 times. It can trigger 5 times during that 10 seconds. So that's times 5, right? But if you're gonna use it at against multiple enemies, it's distributed damage. Okay, so I think the way distributed damage is calculated is that obviously here it says that it takes the enemy with the highest attack. Then I think it takes that enemy with the highest attack, it takes that enemy's defense, and then that's how the damage calculation starts. And then it is distributed differently according to the number of enemies on the field. And this is how it is. So when one enemy is on the field, it will take all the damage. When there are 3 enemies, each will take 1/3 of the accumulated damage. So there's that about distributed damage. Okay, so for Paradise Lost, I think they should improve the accuracy on the targeting. For example, I enable it, right? There will be a blue reticle and it will be on an enemy, but it won't necessarily be targeting that enemy because you need the gold diamond sign to show before the enemy gets marked, right? So if, for example, you're dragging that blue reticle to an enemy, but there's no diamond, but then you press it, there will be no mark. Okay, so I think that's a problem. Since, for example, if you're rushing or like if you're in a high-paced, fast-paced stage or something like that, time is of the essence. Maybe you're spamming your keys, right? Your shortcut keys. And so I think they should improve that. Because against smaller enemies, the blue reticle will sometimes spawn behind the enemy, so it won't be targeting that enemy. The gold diamond will not show. Okay, so there's that. There's a problem with that. Well, not really a big one. You can just always adjust. The second, I think, is that it should spawn on the enemy I'm currently targeting, right? I think that would be best. Because sometimes I'm targeting an enemy with Modernia, and then there's an enemy here. Then I enable this, and then the blue reticle will spawn behind the enemy here, even though I'm attacking this enemy. So that's I think that's something that can be improved. Okay, so next is the branding. Okay, so this is just a theory, okay? So for this one, there's a limit right below. That limit, I think that limit is not affected by attack buffs. Because I tested it with Dolla's entrepreneurship. So I waited for this to activate. So I checked first that Dorothy has that buff. Then I activated her Paradise Lost. So after that, the limit stayed the same, even during times I do not have the buff when I activated it. Okay, so that's just a theory. I don't know if maybe I tested wrong. But if it's true, I'm hoping that the overload gear, okay, that's something big, right? If you have attack percent substat on your overload gear. I hope it counts to the calculation of this one. It's not just caster's attack, it includes the buffs from the overload gear. I hope it does that. Okay, so next is what else? What was I thinking of? Okay, for the enemies being targeted, it does not target enemies that show up after the brand has been applied. So it only targets the enemies that are present when the brand was applied. So for example, a new wave of enemies shows up after you apply the brand. When this triggers, after the animation triggers and the damage box, they are not affected. They are also not included in the calculation for the distributed damage. Okay, so another one is for this distributed damage. They are okay. So there's a time limit, right? There's 10 seconds. After that 10 seconds, it's not automatic that the damage will occur. There's a delay and there's an animation before the damage procs. Okay, so for example, there's 4 enemies that are present when you branded an enemy. And then once this 10 seconds is up, there's still 4 enemies present, right? So it will now lock into those 4 enemies for the calculation of the distributed damage. So it'll be total damage divided by 4 enemies, or divided evenly to 4 enemies. But once the 10 seconds is up, once the brand disappears, and then you kill an enemy, which gives you 3 remaining enemies. The distributed damage will be locked in to divide that damage to 4 enemies. So if you're planning to destroy one enemy, you better do it within this 10 seconds, so that the damage is not decreased in a way. So yeah, more testing to do. Yeah, I think that's all I have right now. Good luck on your polls. If you're gonna watch my polls for Dorothy, you know. Yeah, yay. Anyway, good luck.